The kitchen was silent, except for the slow drip of marinara sauce cooling in the pan. My hands shook as I stirred it the way I always did, exactly how he liked it. Upstairs, I heard him laugh. Then her laugh followed. My heart didn't shatter. It hardened. I served his dinner, kissed him good night, and smiled through every lie. Tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. I can still feel the fairground dirt under my shoes. It stuck to the cuffs of my jeans. Brown dust settling into the seams like tiny reminders of every Saturday we spent there. That's where it all began, Wilsco. Back then, it was just a folding table, a few jars of homemade preserves, and a dream that mostly belonged to me. Smile, Maggie, Thomas would say, straightening the display of soap bars like he was ranging fine art. You're the face of this thing, but I wasn't, not really. He was the one shaking hands, laughing with customers, soaking up the compliments. I handled the cash, tracked inventory, cleaned everything up, ran to the bank, and then cooked dinner. When we got home, my back aching, my hands sticky with syrup and sugar. And it stayed that way for years. Wilsco grew. I quit my job to manage the books full-time. I opened credit cards in my own name to cover supplier delays. I solved every logistical nightmare while Thomas talked about branding and market energy to our expanding team. Every employee was hired by me. Every shipment organized by me. Every tax document filed by me, but no one noticed. Not even our kids. I'd walk into a room and the conversation wouldn't stop. Mom, can you grab me a soda? Mom, where's my charger? Never, thanks, Mom, just expectation. At first, it didn't bother me. Not really. That's how mothers are treated, right? You're the oil in the machine, completely invisible. But without you, nothing moves. Then came the office, 2 years ago. We moved into a real headquarters. White walls, polished concrete floors, huge windows that let in too much sunlight. Thomas put me in a back corner. It's quieter for you, he said. You hate all the noise. He gave himself a glass-walled office overlooking the downtown skyline. In meetings, I spoke. No one listened. Their eyes stayed on him. Even when I handed out quarterly reports with my name signed at the bottom, people would say, "Thanks, Tom, great work." He never corrected them, and I kept cooking dinner, kept folding his socks the way he liked, kept showing up to every board meeting, every vendor call, every employee conflict, nodding along while he took the credit. Something inside me started to rot at the annual retreat last fall. Aspen, a rented chalet, a massive fireplace. Too much wine. That night, we sat around the fire pit. Everyone was drunk, laughing. And Thomas stood up with his tumbler raised. To the heart and soul of Wilsco, he said, eyes shining. To the people who really made it happen. I held my breath. He turned to our head of marketing. Danielle, you're a genius. Couldn't have done it without you. To the VP of operations. Kyle, your logistics saved us in Q3. To the lead designer. Laura, your labels made this brand sexy. Then he sat down. That was it. No Maggie, no my wife. No acknowledgement of the woman who worked unpaid, unseen hours for 2 decades to build everything he was celebrating. I smiled anyway, nodded, clinked my glass. Later, I stood alone in the hallway outside our suite, staring at a framed photo of snow-covered trees. My stomach twisted. My jaw clenched so hard I could feel my teeth grinding. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried in a long time. What was the point? When we got home, I reorganized the office calendar, put myself on every client meeting, sat silently through all of them, noticing how no one even looked at me unless I was pouring coffee. The only time Thomas ever mentioned me at work was when someone asked about the early days. She helped a bit, he said once, flicking his hand like I was a passing thought. Already gone, and I kept thinking about that. About how I knew the password to every account. How every legal document had passed through my hands. How I'd notarized half of them myself in our garage years ago. How I had signed something once, something big, and he told me it was just for facilitation. That's what he called it. I remembered the exact moment. I was standing at the kitchen island, chicken sizzling behind me. He handed me a pen and a folder and said he needed my signature fast. Something about an investor needing proof of ownership so the next round could move forward. I didn't read it. I just signed. The chicken burned that night. I remember the smell more than anything. I didn't sleep after Aspen, not at all. And the next morning, while Thomas whistled in the bathroom like nothing had changed, I went up to the attic. I knew exactly where the folder was, green, thick, labeled legal. I carried it down, laid it flat on my bed, and started reading. The truth hit harder than any slap, any betrayal, any careless insult he'd ever thrown my way. He had signed everything over to me. Everything. Not symbolically, not emotionally, legally, completely. He hadn't realized it, or he never imagined I'd do anything with it. He used me, and now he had no idea what I was holding. That night, I made lasagna, his favorite. I layered it with ricotta, fresh herbs, and spite. I kissed him good night. I smiled through every lie. And the whole time, I could feel something building, something ancient and wild. Waking up in my bones, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg, but I was done being invisible. Done making dinner. Done being the oil in the machine. Done being a bit. I was about to become the storm. There's a quiet kind of rage that lives in repetition. The creak of my office chair as I sat down for the Monday meeting. The click of the conference room door closing behind me. The smell of burnt coffee in the break room that no one ever cleaned. I used to think those were small, forgettable things. But when you're invisible, the little details are the only ones that notice you back. I'd started keeping a notebook. Just observations, dates, names, who talked over me. Who rolled their eyes when I suggested a new inventory system. Who praised Thomas for a solution I'd whispered to him 15 minutes earlier. They thought I didn't see it. That I didn't understand. I understood everything. That morning, I sat at the corner of the long glass table, flipping through the printed agenda like I hadn't rewritten it twice the night before. Across from me, Thomas adjusted his cufflinks, those ridiculous silver ones shaped like tiny hot sauce bottles. He thought they made him relatable. Beside him sat Lauren. She was new. 3 weeks at the company and already dressed like a VP, tight pencil skirt, sky-high heels, designer blouse. Thomas introduced her as our business growth strategist. What that actually meant, I still wasn't sure, but she had opinions. A lot of them. And she shared them with the breathless confidence of someone who'd never been told to wait her turn. I think we need to modernize our brand tone, she said, flipping her sleek black hair over her shoulder. Right now, the Wilsco voice feels tired, old-fashioned. She didn't even look at me when she said it. Thomas nodded like a bobblehead. Exactly what I've been thinking. Around the table, people murmured their agreement. I stared at a smear of coffee on the glass. I'd cleaned that exact spot the day before. No one noticed. They never did, Margaret, Lauren said suddenly, her voice coated in sweetness. You've been here since the beginning, right? What's your take? I looked up slowly and met her eyes. My take? I said, calm and steady. I built the tone of this brand from scratch. Back when we printed labels on a dot matrix printer and glued them on by hand in our basement. So if it feels old-fashioned, it's because it has a soul, not a filter. Silence, then a few laughs. Nervous ones, unsure. Thomas cleared his throat. Let's not get stuck in the past, hun. Things evolve, hun. He still called me that in meetings like I was his assistant. Like I was something he owned. My stomach tightened, but my face didn't move. Lauren smiled like she'd won that night. I sat alone at the kitchen table with a glass of white wine and my old files spread out around me. The kids were gone now, off living their own lives. Too busy to visit. Too distracted to remember the woman who raised them while building a company out of scraps. I wondered when I disappeared for them too. Was it when I stopped going to baseball games because of supplier calls? When I missed parent-teacher night because I had to fly to Portland to negotiate a packaging deal? I didn't know, I just knew I had given everything in now for the first time. I was done giving it away. When I stopped correcting them when they thanked Dad for the vacations I paid for. I kept turning the pages, legal documents, ownership statements, meeting minutes. My name was on all of them. Not his. I'd forgotten that. Or maybe I'd let myself forget. Somewhere along the way, I allowed Thomas to rewrite the story. I made myself smaller so he could shine, but now I remembered. And when I looked at Lauren, I didn't just see a woman trying to rise in a man's world. I wasn't that naive. I saw someone who thought she'd already won. Someone who saw me as weak. And Thomas saw her as a fresh chapter. I was just the worn-out preface. So the next day, when he called me into his office to show me the brand refresh mock-ups Lauren had done, sleek, cold, nothing like the company we built, I smiled, I nodded. I even said, she's very talented, because the truth is, it's easier to win when they don't see the fight coming. I left his office and walked down the hallway, my heels silent on the laminate floor. Past Danielle, who barely looked up. Past Kyle, who gave me a clipped nod. None of them knew what I'd found in the attic. What I was beginning to remember. What I was planning they would. For now, I stayed quiet. Because silence when you own everything isn't weakness. It's strategy. The night Thomas brought her home, I knew it wasn't exactly the way he said her name. Not even the way his voice lifted at the end. Like a boy trying to impress the new girl in class, though it did. It was the way he set the table. Thomas hasn't set a table in 20 years. I came home from the supplier's warehouse 4 hours on the road. Back and forth, and there he was, laying out the cloth napkins we only use for guests. He even lit candles, real ones. Not the battery-operated ones I prefer for safety, and the smell rosemary chicken, my recipe. Slightly overdone, he smiled when I walked in like everything was normal. Hey, babe, he said, wiping his hands on a towel. I made dinner. For a second, my heart clenched. A flicker of hope, small, foolish. Then she turned the corner, Lauren wearing heels in my kitchen, laughing like she owned the air. I hope you don't mind, she said lightly, perfectly practiced. Tom thought it would be nice for us to get to know each other. Double quotes Tom. She called him Tom. I poured myself a glass of water. My hand trembled just enough that I noticed. I tightened my grip. We sat at the table. She took my seat at the head. Thomas didn't correct her. Didn't even notice. He served her first. I watched her cut into the chicken with delicate precision, praising the seasoning. It's Margaret's recipe, Thomas said, chewing like a teenager showing off. She's always been amazing in the kitchen. He said it like a fun fact. Like I was the family dog who knew tricks. I didn't talk much during dinner. I smiled, I nodded. And when Lauren started outlining her ideas for the future of the brand, I stared at the carpet near the pantry. A small pink stain. Merlot from the bottle I dropped during a supplier call last year. No one noticed then, either. And Tom, she continued, her voice lifting, your leadership has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much already. I can't wait to contribute. I turned to her. That's sweet, I said. So what exactly is your title now? She hesitated, just slightly. Oh, I'm the strategic growth partner. I raised an eyebrow. Partner? Thomas jumped in. Yeah, babe. I meant to mention we brought her on as an equity partner. Just a small percentage. To get her invested. You know how it is. There it was. The heat crawling up my neck wasn't from the wine. I felt it in my jaw. In the tight curl of my toes inside my flats. I forced my lips into a smile so sharp it could have cut steak. Oh, I said. Of course. After dessert, store-bought cheesecake. Lauren's favorite. She left soon after. Thomas kissed her cheek at the door. I watched in the reflection of the microwave. He didn't know I was watching. Back in the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, looking pleased with himself. She's smart, ambitious. She's got the kind of vision we need. Danielle's been too rigid lately. He poured another glass of wine and held it out to me. I shook my head. You good? He asked. I smiled. Perfectly. He asked, finally looking at me. I smiled. Of course. She's impressive. He didn't hear the weight beneath the words. He never did. That night, I lay beside him in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly overhead. He snored softly, one arm thrown across the mattress like he owned all the space. I didn't cry. Instead, I thought about the contract again, the one Lauren had signed on her first day. So eager, so proud. It had been a standard onboarding packet, buried between tax forms and NDA letters. All of it reviewed and approved by me. I remembered the clause. Control of the company rests with the majority shareholder. All decisions are final unless overruled by a board majority vote, which does not include advisory partners. Lauren had no board seat. Thomas had no shares. I had everything. Still, I let him sleep. Let him dream whatever dreams men like him dream when they believe they're still in control. I curled toward the edge of the bed, the sheets cool against my skin, and in the dark, I smiled. For the first time in years, I wasn't smiling to please. I was smiling to plan. There's something terrifyingly intimate about old paper. The smell. The brittle sound when it unfolds. The weight it carries, not just in ink and legal language, but in the moments it represents. I sat on the floor of our walk-in closet. Documents spread around me like a broken mosaic of a life I barely recognized. It was past midnight. Thomas slept on, mouth open, his light snoring drifting through the cracked door. I turned off the closet light and used my phone's flashlight instead. Its cold glow skimmed across old receipts, contracts, tax records. Then I found the folder. Mere Wilson transfer agreements. My hands were shaking, not from fear. Not exactly. It was something deeper, colder, closer to rage, but controlled. Page after page. Every signature was mine. Every clause reviewed, approved, and filed under my name. His name appeared only twice, both times as a witness. Never as an owner. He had handed me the empire and forgotten he'd done it. He was so certain I'd never use it. Back then, we were drowning. On the edge of bankruptcy. Suppliers refused to deal with us without guarantees. I had a clean credit score. ACPA license. A name that looked safe on a dotted line. It's just temporary, Maggie, he'd said. Just to get the deal through. I believed him. I always did. But sitting there with that folder in my lap, I finally understood something. Belief is just the polite mask we put on denial. I closed the folder gently, like tucking in a child for the last time. My knees cracked as I stood. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and studied my reflection. I looked tired. Not the tired of a woman who needs sleep. The tired of a woman who has carried too many people for too long, and has finally felt the weight begin to shift back where it belongs. The next morning, I made breakfast like always: bacon, eggs, toast, black coffee in his favorite mug. World's okayest boss, I bought it as a joke 12 Christmases ago. He never got the joke. He came into the kitchen, hair still damp from the shower, humming a country song I hated. He kissed the top of my head like we were in a movie. Big day today, he said. I want to bring Lauren into some vendor meetings. Show her the ropes. I stirred the eggs without looking up. You think she's ready for that? He laughed. She's a natural, Maggie. You'll see, she's a natural. The words echoed in my head all morning, bouncing around the edges of my thoughts as I sat in the back of the boardroom, flipping through vendor profiles while Thomas let Lauren talk over me again. By noon, I'd made my decision. I emailed our lawyer. Not Thomas's friend, my lawyer. The one I kept after the IP dispute. The one he never knew I still worked with. Subject line, Wilsco, immediate review and reorganization steps. He replied in under an hour. Let's do this. That night, I cooked lasagna. Real lasagna. Homemade layers of ricotta, spinach, and meat sauce. The house smelled the way Sundays used to smell back when the kids were little, and thought their father was the hero. Back when I pretended I was proud to be his shadow, I watched him take the first bite. He smiled. God, you're amazing. You know that? I smiled back. I know. Later, he went to bed early. Big day tomorrow, he said. A meeting with a potential investor. He wanted to look sharp. I stayed up after he went to bed, sitting in the living room with the folder resting in my lap, turning the pages again. Ownership. Voting rights. Termination clauses. I underlined one line in red. The holder of controlling shares maintains sole authority over staff, appointments, and equity restructuring decisions, barring any contrary provision, none of which shall supersede without written amendment. I had the authority. I had the power. And for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't afraid to use it. I turned off the light and climbed into bed carefully, not wanting to wake him. He rolled toward me, his arm reaching out, eyes still closed. Maggie, he murmured, half asleep. You're not mad about Lauren, right? I didn't answer. I just closed my eyes, because the truth was, I wasn't mad. I was awake. I woke before sunrise. Thomas was still snoring, mouth open, arms spread across my side of the bed like he owned it. I stared at the ceiling, listening to birds outside the window, and realized something I hadn't felt in years. I felt nothing for him, not anger, not love, nothing. The kind of emptiness that comes when a wound finally stops bleeding and you realize it's already healed. Downstairs, I brewed coffee, black, no sugar, the way I like it when I don't have to pretend I'm still sweet. I sat at the kitchen table with the documents spread out in front of me, the same table where we once folded labels by hand, where the kids spilled juice boxes, where Thomas told stories that made them laugh. So much had happened there, and none of it felt real anymore. I picked up my red pen and began circling names. The accountant, the legal advisor on retainer, the operations lead, every single person who still believed Thomas was running the company. They would be replaced quietly, legally, effectively. I picked up the phone and dialed Joseph Reed, my lawyer. The one Thomas never knew I kept. Joseph, I said, my voice steady. We're moving forward today. He didn't ask questions. I have the restructuring documents ready. You're the sole decision maker under the ownership agreement. We'll begin personnel transitions and file board notifications this afternoon. I nodded. And Lauren? He chuckled. She signed a partnership clause with 0 voting rights and a conditional equity stake. We can void it without penalty. Do it by 8 a.m. I was dressed. Navy blazer. Crisp white blouse. Hair pulled back, no makeup. No frills. I didn't need decoration. I walked into Wilsco headquarters like a ghost finally stepping back into her own body. Kyle greeted me in the lobby. Morning, Margaret. Did you see the new display layouts? Lauren was planning. Schedule a meeting, I said. All department heads. Executive boardroom, he blinked. All of them? Yes, including Thomas. Inside my office, I sat at my desk for the first time in months. It still smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser I used to refill. Before Lauren took over the space, I opened my laptop and typed a short, precise message. Subject, organizational update, effective immediately, simple, professional, final. They filed into the boardroom one by one. Lauren arrived last, dressed in a cream-colored suit and designer heels, smiling like she was headed to a spa. Thomas followed close behind, coffee in hand, moving like gravity bent around him. I stood. I called this meeting, I said, to clarify the structure of Wilsco as of today. Thomas laughed. Margaret, what is this? We have an investor call in an hour. I canceled it. He froze. Lauren frowned. Wait, why? I held up a document. As of this morning, I've executed full authority under the existing ownership agreement. All operational decisions now fall solely under my direction. Effective immediately. The silence was deafening. Thomas leaned forward. What are you talking about? This isn't funny. No, I said calmly. It isn't, but it is legal. I looked at him. You transferred full ownership to me. Remember that contract you had me sign for facilitation? His face drained of color that was never reversed. You're not a partner, Tom, you're an employee. Technically, a contractor. I turned to Lauren. Your partnership clause is invalid. Your shares were never ratified. You're dismissed. Her face crumpled like wet paper. You can't. I can, I said. And I did. She looked to Thomas for help, but he couldn't move. He just stared at the table. I gathered my papers. You may collect your personal belongings, I said evenly. You'll receive formal notifications by the end of the day. No one spoke. I walked out of the boardroom and didn't look back. I felt my pulse steady, my breath slow, my spine straighten. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just in the room, I owned it. That morning, I buttered his toast, folded the napkin exactly the way he liked it, triangle point facing left, placed his coffee on the right, black, 1 sugar, poured orange juice into the tall glass. No pulp. I did everything the same way I had for the past 20 years. Except this time, I wasn't serving a husband, I was feeding an employee. Thomas shuffled into the kitchen wearing his usual half-ironed polo and khakis. Still smug, still unaware. He dropped into his chair, rubbed his eyes, and groaned like a man crushed under the weight of his own importance. God, I didn't sleep a wink last night. Too much on my mind, he said. Lauren's shaken up. Says she's going to talk to legal. Thinks you made a mistake. I sipped my coffee slowly. The bitterness spread through my chest like armor. She's welcome to, I said. He didn't hear the edge in my voice. He never did, you know, he went on. I've been thinking. Maybe we take a step back from all this restructuring crap. I get it, you were mad. You made your point. But this is our company, Maggie. Let's not burn the house down just because the furniture shifted. I stared at him across the table. My fork hovered over my eggs. Our company? He nodded. Like a politician caught in a lie he believed would become truth if he repeated it enough. Yeah, come on, babe. You're not seriously going to let that lawyer manipulate you into thinking you should run the place solo? I mean, let's be honest. You've always been great with the numbers, but vision leadership, that's what I bring. That's what built this thing. He said it with such confidence. I almost admired it. Almost. Double quotes Thomas. I said, setting my fork down. You don't bring vision. You bring noise, charm, shortcuts. I built this company with sleepless nights and spreadsheets, not handshakes and happy hours. He snorted. Jesus, you sound just like Lauren. I smiled. I'm nothing like Lauren. He pushed his plate away, eyes narrowing. So what? You're just going to run everything yourself now? Freeze me out? You're not frozen out, I said, taking another sip of coffee. You're still with the company as what? He snapped. I leaned in, softening my voice just enough to make it land harder. You're an employee, Tom, like everyone else. You'll have a title. You'll get assignments. You'll follow direction. His jaw clenched. You're joking. I'm not. I built this damn thing, he hissed, his voice rising. I met his eyes. No, we built it. But only one of us kept it standing. Only one of us stayed on the ground floor. Only one of us stayed when it stopped being fun. He shot up so fast his chair screeched across the tile. You're out of your mind. No, I said. Calm and steady. I'm finally sane. He stormed out of the kitchen. I stayed where I was and finished my breakfast. Later that day, I walked into the office like a woman wearing her name for the first time. The air was tight. Conversations dropped into whispers as I passed. No one spoke to me directly until Danielle, our head of marketing, stopped me near the break room. She looked nervous, unsure which side she was supposed to stand on. Margaret. Is it true? I met her eyes. What have you heard? That you fired Lauren. That you took full control. That Thomas, he's not, he's an employee now, I said. Her lips parted. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something supportive. Then fear crept in. I understood. They were used to the old regime, the one where I poured coffee and typed notes. Not the one where I signed paychecks. In my office, I started redlining the org chart. Out went anyone loyal to Thomas for the wrong reasons. Anyone who ignored me in meetings. Anyone who smirked when I made a smart point. Only to repeat it louder 5 minutes later and get credit for it. They were all replaceable. I wasn't. I scheduled meetings. Reviewed projects. Called contractors. I hired quiet, competent women I'd met at leadership conferences over the years, women I'd never had the authority to bring in before. Now I did. And every time I passed the framed photo in the hallway, me and Thomas at our first trade show, him grinning, me holding a box, I thought about taking them all down, but I didn't. I let them hang, let them watch, let them remind every visitor exactly who built WILS code. By the end of the week, I had a new executive team. And Thomas, he hadn't shown up to the office since Monday. I didn't call him. He worked for me now. He could figure it out. 5 days passed. No texts, no calls. Not even a passive-aggressive email ceasing the team. Just silence, the kind that doesn't feel like absence, but anticipation. Like a dog hiding under a porch before it comes back snapping. Friday morning, he showed up. I saw him through the office window, climbing the steps with his shoulders squared. Sunglasses on like armor. He wore his best navy blazer, the one he saved for pitch meetings and golf outings. His mouth was set in a hard line. He was here to fight. I was ready. He didn't acknowledge the receptionist. Just pushed through the glass doors like he still owned the place. I stood when he entered my office, not because I was intimidated, but because I wanted to meet him eye to eye. Maggie, he said, staying on his feet. What the hell are you doing? I gestured to the chair across from me. Why don't you tell me what you think I'm doing? You've humiliated me. I didn't blink. How? He threw his arms wide. You stripped me of my title. You froze my email. The team doesn't even know if I'm still employed. I walked into this building and my badge didn't work because you haven't reported for work. I said evenly. And you no longer hold an executive role. Your badge was tied to executive access. You now have standard employee permissions. His mouth opened, ready to argue, but no sound came out. I continued. You'll receive a formal onboarding packet for your new role. I've assigned you to product development support. You'll report to Danielle. Danielle, he barked. She's 20 years younger than me, 27, I corrected. And significantly more competent. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him because he didn't. I can sue. He said, quieter now. You know that, right? I can take this public. I sat down slowly and folded my hands. You can try. But the documents are clean. Your name isn't on the ownership filings, the equity grants, or the board roster. I made sure of that. Everything is legal. And if you do go public, well, the media loves a woman reclaiming what was always hers. He looked like he might cry. Or hit something. Instead, he dropped into the chair. Why are you doing this? I let the question hang. Why? Because you made me feel like nothing in my own story. Because you praised interns and side flings while I built an empire in silence. Because you told me I was only good at the small things every time I spoke up. Because you took credit for every success and handed me every failure, but I didn't say any of that. I smiled. Because I'm tired, I said. Tired of pretending I don't know how to lead. He looked away. You should go, I added. Danielle will expect you Monday. He left without another word. Later that day, Lauren showed up. She didn't ask to see me. She went straight to HR, demanded her files, then left with a dramatic toss of her hair without saying goodbye to anyone. Good. I walked the halls after that, floor by floor, spoke with teams, took questions, asked for feedback. And for the first time, people looked me in the eye when they answered. They saw me. Not Mrs. Wilson. Not the quiet co-founder. Me. When I returned to my office, a bouquet of flowers sat on my desk. No card. But I knew they weren't from Thomas. They were from someone who understood what had shifted. I sat down, looked out at the skyline, and took a deep breath. The silence wasn't anticipation anymore. It was peace. I called a meeting for 9 a.m. sharp. No vague calendar invite. No drop-in if you're available. This was a full executive meeting. Every department head. Mandatory attendance. One clear directive. Attendance required by company leadership and all strategic partners. Conference room A, no exceptions. Thomas tried to reschedule. He emailed Danielle the night before, claiming a conflict and asking to push it to Friday. Danielle forwarded it to me without comment. I replied with one sentence, conflict resolved. That morning, I was already in the room. The glass walls caught the early sunlight, casting long shadows across the polished table. I stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, a thick file folder in front of me. 3 months of documentation. Every transfer, every personnel change, every contract restructured under my authority. By the time the room filled, the air already felt tight. Lauren arrived, sleek as ever, tailored blazer, heels snapping sharply against the tile. She didn't smile at me. She simply slid into a chair beside Thomas's usual seat, claiming it like it was hers by default. Thomas walked in late. On purpose, he flashed a quick, sheepish grin at a few team members, then gave me a casual nod like nothing had changed. Sorry, parking's a nightmare today. No one laughed. I didn't ask him to sit. I began. Thank you all for coming. Today's agenda is brief. We're entering a new phase at Wilsco, one where visibility, accountability, and actual contribution determine leadership. I picked up the folder and started handing out packets. One by one, they landed in front of everyone at the table. Eyes dropped. Pages turned. The tension thickened, slow and heavy like honey in the cold. Thomas's smile faded as he flipped through his copy. Lauren blinked once, then again. She straightened in her chair. This isn't the current org chart. No, I said evenly. It's the new one. She looked at Thomas. He looked at me. What the hell is this? He muttered. I walked to the screen behind me and clicked the remote. A slide appeared. Wilsco Executive Leadership, updated structure at the top, CEO, Margaret Wilson below it. A clean, stripped-down chart. Department heads reported directly to me. Thomas's name didn't appear in leadership. Not one. Product development associate, support staff, Lauren's name wasn't there at all. You can't do this, she said, her voice tight. I turned to her calmly. Legally, I can and I have. The filings were submitted to the Secretary of State last week and ratified by our attorney. You signed a partnership agreement that granted you no executive authority. You're not a board member and you're no longer an employee. Thomas stood up. Okay, this is ridiculous. You can't fire us in front of the team. I'm not firing anyone, I said. I'm clarifying status. This meeting isn't for debate. It's for orientation. Danielle, bless her, spoke up. So you really have full control? I nodded once. No apology. No softness. Yes, not anymore. Thomas opened his mouth again, but I raised a hand. Let me be crystal clear. This company is moving forward under my leadership. Anyone unwilling to adapt is free to step away. But the days of backroom deals, side partnerships, and exclusionary decisions are over. Lauren shoved her chair back. This is insane. You're dismissed, I said without looking at her. HR will process your paperwork. She hesitated, then stormed out. Her heels cracked against the floor like gunfire. Thomas didn't follow. He just stared at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes unreadable. Margaret, what are you doing? He asked, quieter now. Taking back my name, I said. And everything that came with it. I turned to the team. If anyone else feels their time at Wilsco has ended, you're welcome to exit with dignity. If not, we begin again. No one moved. A few heads nodded. One person clapped, just once. But it was enough. I sat down, picked up my coffee, and took a slow sip. The meeting continued without Thomas, without Lauren, and finally, with me. He didn't come home that night. No call. No message, nothing. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, staring at the empty chair across from me, the one he always slouched in, while scrolling sports scores and ignoring everything I said for the first time. It wasn't a symbol of absence. It was a symbol of peace. But peace doesn't last long in a world built on imbalance. The next morning, he was waiting for me at the office. Not in the lobby. Not in the parking lot. In my office. Sitting in my chair. When I opened the door, he turned slowly, holding a folder, his termination packet. He didn't look angry. He looked lost. You actually did it, he said quietly. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Double quotes. Yes, he stood, walked around the desk, stared at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. No salary? He asked, his voice raw. No, you made me an employee, he said. Then you took the salary. The perks, everything. Yes, he laughed, sharp, bitter, hollow. You've been planning this. I didn't deny it. He shook his head. I built this. I brought in the money. The clients. The name, he said. You were the one who made it work. That was always the deal. The deal? I stepped closer. You mean the unspoken agreement that I'd sacrifice my time, my career, my life, so you could stand in front of everyone and pretend you did it alone? You were good at that, he said. Holding everything together, I nodded. And now I'm good at taking it back. He sat down on the edge of the desk like the wind had been knocked out of him. I don't have another job lined up, he admitted. That's not my problem. God, Maggie. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't have to do this. You're not like this. You never knew what I was like, I said, my voice flat. You only knew what I gave you. He looked down at the packet again. And now you're taking it all. I'm not taking anything, I said. I'm restoring what should have always been mine. He stared at the floor like it might open up and swallow him. I almost pitied him, almost. But then I remembered the dinners I ate alone while he stayed out networking. The ideas I shared that he repeated louder 5 minutes later. The nights he praised other women's ambition while dismissing mine as nagging. He didn't deserve my pity. Is this revenge? He asked finally. No, I said. This is reality. He stood and walked to the door, his hand resting on the knob. Where does this leave us? I didn't answer. He didn't wait for one. The door closed softly behind him. Later that afternoon, HR confirmed his formal demotion had been processed. He would retain a small contractor role. No benefits, no title, no voice. The team adapted quickly. Danielle took over product. Kyle stepped up as interim coup. For the first time, meetings ended on time. Decisions were made collaboratively. Feedback moved freely without fear, and the clients? They stayed. One longtime distributor even sent a handwritten note that simply said, "About damn time." I framed it and hung it above my desk right where his name used to be. The story broke online that morning. WILS co-CEO Margaret Wilson restructures company. Removes former husband from executive role. It was everywhere. LinkedIn, industry blogs. Even one of those women in business Instagram accounts with pastel quotes and one-word captions like power. My inbox exploded. Some emails came from shocked acquaintances. Is this true? Others were from suppliers I hadn't heard from in years, offering congratulations wrapped in careful professionalism, but most of them were from women. Women I'd met at conferences who once shook my hand and whispered, "I hope I'm not doing this alone forever." Women who were assistants, co-founders, background geniuses. Women who had spent their lives being the quiet one who kept everything running. They weren't whispering anymore, they were cheering. One subject line read, "You did what we all dream about." Danielle printed that one and taped it to the breakroom fridge. The atmosphere at Wilsco changed almost overnight. People started knocking on my door not out of obligation, but out of respect. They asked for feedback, approval, direction. The interns introduced themselves to me on day one. No more pretending I was just Thomas's wife, now he was just another employee. His first week in his new role was quiet. He showed up at 9 a.m. every day, avoided eye contact, and sat in the open bullpen like everyone else. No private office, no assistant, no special treatment. He didn't speak in meetings unless spoken to. He submitted reports, completed task sheets, received feedback. Danielle was firm with him, polite, professional. She never once acknowledged the former hierarchy. He hated it. I could see it in his posture. The way he folded inward when someone younger explained something he used to pretend to understand. The way he lingered outside my office like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words anymore. Good. Let silence be the sound of his consequences. Lauren, predictably, went scorched earth. She posted vague, dramatic messages about betrayal in business and watching your back when you give someone your trust. One even showed her walking away from the Wilsco building, a designer bag slung dramatically over one shoulder. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was already public and no one was asking for her version. The article that made the biggest impact came from a small business magazine I hadn't read in years. The headline read, "The woman behind the brand steps forward. Margaret Wilson's strategic coup at Wilsco." They used a photo of me from the early days, me in a flannel shirt, sitting on a folding chair at the farmer's market, clipboard in hand, pen tucked between my fingers, no makeup, wind in my hair, focused. Under it, they printed a single line. "For years, she was called the glue that held it all together. Now she's finally being called what she is, the foundation that one broke me." I hadn't cried in weeks, not since the night I read that contract in the closet. But this wasn't grief. It was release. I framed that article too and hung it beside the distributor's note. I wanted the walls of my office to reflect the truth for once, not his version, mine. After the article ran, they started calling. First Amanda, then Brian, then Jake, my youngest. Not one of them asked how I was. "Mom," Amanda said in a voicemail, "I just wanted to talk. You know, about what's going on." "You could have told us," Jake texted. "Dad says you're being vindictive." Is that true? Vindictive, the word echoed in my head like a low bell. After 30 years of holding my breath so they could thrive, packing school lunches while answering emails, driving to late-night rehearsals after vendor calls, staying up to study tax code so we wouldn't lose our first building. And still they saw him as the hero, as the victim. Maybe it wasn't their fault. Thomas had always been louder. He was the one at the games, the events, the parent nights. I was behind spreadsheets, paying bills, building the walls that kept everything from collapsing. They never noticed the silence I carried. They never asked where their tuition came from or why I never missed a payment. I didn't return their calls. Not yet. I needed time to remember who I was before I was mom, before I was the wife, before I was the fixer. I needed to remember Margaret, the woman who once read 2 books a week, the woman who dreamed of opening her own accounting firm, before marriage turned those dreams into maybe later. The woman who hadn't worn her favorite blue earrings in 10 years. Because he said they made her look too serious. I found them in the back of a drawer that afternoon. Put them on, something clicked into place. At the office, everything kept moving. The energy had shifted. People asked real questions, took real risks. We launched a new product line without Thomas's approval and it sold out in hours. He said nothing, just submitted his monthly report on time. Danielle told me he'd stopped pushing back. He did what was asked. No charm, no attitude. Just quiet compliance. He was shrinking, I was growing. Still, late at night, when the house was dark and the fridge hummed like it always had, I felt it, the ghosts. Not of Thomas. Not even of Lauren. Of me. The younger version who let herself be erased piece by piece. Believing that was what love looked like. One night I sat on the couch, wine in hand, TV off, staring at a family photo on the bookshelf. All of us smiling at some 4th of July picnic years ago. I'd cooked for today's for that event. He took the credit, they never knew. My thumb hovered over Amanda's name on my phone. I didn't press dial. Instead, I whispered into the room, I did everything for you. Every damn thing. And you still saw him. No one answered, but it didn't matter because I was finally hearing myself. The day the new sign went up, I arrived at the office before dawn. It was still dark. The streets were quiet, broken only by the hum of a delivery truck or an early commuter. I parked across the street and sat in the car, engine off, watching the workers on the scaffolding. They moved carefully, precisely when the tarp came down. The morning light hit the letters just right. Wilsco by M. Wilsoni stared at it until the sun rose. No more hiding behind initials. No more pretending I was just part of something I built from the foundation up. No more borrowed names. Mine. Inside, the office buzzed with a new kind of energy. Danielle had set up a small reception in the lobby, coffee, pastries. A simple banner that read, New Chapter. Same heart. Employees filtered in, wide-eyed, smiling. Some clapped softly. Others hugged me. Someone handed me a card signed by the entire staff. It read, Thank you for seeing us and for finally letting us see you, at course sharp. I walked into the main conference room where a new executive team was waiting. All women. All sharp, seasoned, previously overlooked. Some former assistants. Others had left toxic companies and were ready to lead. We weren't a revolution. We were a return, a reclamation. This is yours, I told them. We build it together. No egos, no games. Just the work and the credit where it's earned. Heads nodded. Eyes glistened. I saw in them what no one had seen in me for decades, fire across town. I imagined Thomas at the kitchen table in our house, my house, now reading the news. Seeing the photo of the new sign above the building that no longer bore his name. He hadn't shown up to work in a week. Danielle told me he'd submitted his resignation quietly. No meeting. No grand farewell. Just a printed letter left on her desk. He was gone. I felt nothing. No triumph, no sorrow. Just clarity. The silence I'd lived in for so long was finally replaced with something else, recognition. That afternoon, I stood on the rooftop of the building, coffee in hand, wind tugging at my blazer. The city stretched out in every direction, chaotic and alive. Below, the team worked. Above, the sky opened wide. Somewhere in between, I had found myself again. Not the wife. Not the mother. Not the quiet co-founder in the background. Just Margaret, the woman who gave it all and finally took it back, and this time, no one would ever take it from her again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.